Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Drop Frames. I'm itmeJP, joined as always by my two co-hosts, Cohh and Ezekiel III. And this week we got a very special start as we're joined by Swen, aka Larian, the work, the god behind Baldurs. What's your actual title here on Baldur's Gate 3? Where are we sitting with? Where do we go from here, Swen?
I'm calling myself the game director these days.
The game directors. To some god, to others game director, right? Maybe.
Hi, guys.
Okay, all right. He's too humble. He's too humble to say it, guys. He's just too humble. I miss. Where's the armor? Is it getting polished right now? Is that where we're?
I got a new armor actually, and on the stream from hell, I was there's always somebody that helps me, but because of COVID, the team that normally helps me, they're in our Dublin studio,
Right.
and so we had somebody else, and so I discovered just in front of the stream that the prep that he had was watching a YouTube video in which how to put on an armor. And so I sat during that stream with the armor, vice versa. So this is the reason why you didn't see me move at all. And so now I exactly, there you go.
This was just a crazy setup. This was from a production point of view, this is nuts. You guys went all out.
Yeah, we had fun, but you can see there the awkward position, right? And notice how little movement there is in the entire body there. I tend to move a lot, but there wasn't a lot there.
Yeah, this is the panel from hell. If you guys haven't seen this yet, it's up on their YouTube channel. A lot of great content, early access announcements and whatnot. But you also get just a crazy for you and Adam, just crazy production levels. It was good stuff.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I actually thought for a majority of that you were just the head and everything else was green screened around you.
Well, that goes how painful the armor was.
Yeah. Jeez.
Well, I was expecting him to like look to his left and tell someone to like fetch him a turkey leg or something and just put it right in his mouth.
Yeah.
I actually had a whole bunch of props that I could reach that I was going to be doing something. So
they didn't even give you like a grabber or something.
No grabber.
What is the robot arm from back in the day?
Oh yeah, that would have worked.
Yeah,
man.
So,
okay.
Moment.
Yeah, crazy stuff. It's been kind of a crazy couple of, I would say, months for you guys. First off, the big announcement: Baldur's Gate 3 is a thing that's coming out. I think that was a huge surprise, as well as to see you guys working on it. Most recently, at that panel of hell we were just talking about, you guys announced early access. As you were saying, I said 30 days from now, but you were very quick to correct me. No, it's 28, JP, here in the pre-show. Are you counting the days? Is every day one step closer for you, and you just kind of like, oh God, I hope it's all good. Where's you and the company and all the devs? Where are you guys at right now?
It's a precisely timed, fine-oiled machine in which every single step has been pre-calculated. So it's total chaos right now. And but it's normal. Like there's still many pieces in the air, but they're starting to land.
Yeah.
And so far they're landing in the right spots. We're finishing a recording actually tomorrow. So we are the voice recordings for early access content are ending bar pickups, I guess.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. So that's a little bit later than we expected, but we should still be able to manage. So we'll see. But we still have a bunch of work, but it looks like we might make it.
I'm glad you started. Oh, go ahead, finish.
No, I mean, like, it's fine. Don't worry.
Okay. I was going to say, I'm glad we can finish our discussion from earlier, because you said there was 45,000 lines in early access for Baldur's Gate 3. And Divinity 2, what was the number? 80,000 in total?
Across the entire game.
Yeah.
So it's 48,000 right now. So it still goes up as we add lines here and there, because it is early access, so it is a rolling target. But it is, it's a lot of content. There's a lot of, it's all voiced, motion captured, so all cinematically treated. So lighting is being done on it, VFX, SFX, so it's a huge production.
Yeah.
And so, and then these COVID times, that makes it a little bit extra complicated also to get it all in there. But it's starting to work. I mean, like it's team is doing a fantastic job on it.
Yeah, man.
Just thank you for that. By the way, it's especially with games of this size, it is such a huge difference when the entire thing has its own voice, where the characters can actually like tell their story instead of like where it's kind of like a reading a book. In a game format, it makes such a big deal for the immersion. So I'm sure it's an absolute gargantuan undertaking, but thoroughly appreciated for sure.
Yeah. In the unique position that we're in as streamers, we especially love it when games are fully voice acted. Because reading the lines of dialogue ad nauseum, no one wants to hear us do crappy voice acting. We want to hear the pros do it, right?
Unless you're Zeke.
Speak for yourself, pal.
No,
They
no,
love my
Zeke.
bad
No,
accents and my terrible impressions.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. So it's awesome when I think Cohh, you just wrapped up Wasteland 3 and that was fully voice acted. I'm sure you could speak to how much that benefited the whole game. Yeah.
It makes such a gigantic difference. It's again, and also because like a lot of times when you're playing a CRPG by yourself and you're reading it in your head, you can kind of assign voices to it. But when you're streaming, like you said, you have to read them out loud. So all of a sudden, every character you come across, you have to read has your voice. So it kind of messes with you a little bit when you're hearing yourself on every single person.
Yeah.
You can't really get that next level of being able to imagine what they would sound like. So yeah, and especially when in a situation like this where the voice acting is like very fine tuned and it's good. It's not just getting the line said. But, you know, like bringing in Amelia Tyler, like she's phenomenal. Absolutely loved her in Pathfinder Kingmaker. Was thrilled to hear that you guys brought her back or brought her on for that, and especially from DOS 2. So yeah, it's gonna be palpably awesome. It's the only way I can think to say it.
Yeah.
And she's a really good pick as a narrator. I mean, she nailed the. I think she did a couple of trials, and she figured out how a dungeon master was going to sound. And now when you're playing it, you just whenever she talks, it really grips you. You like said, okay, I'm sitting at this table. My dungeon master is telling me something.
Oh, I didn't
I'll
even
just shut up
think
as
about.
she's talking.
I didn't even think about like she's the dungeon master. She's not the narrator. She's the dungeon master.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how we're treating it.
Huh.
So
That's
so
pretty
she's
rad. That's pretty rad.
Yeah. And
Yeah. Let's talk about we brought up Divinity multiple times. Obviously, that's Larian's DNA, right? Divinity and Divinity 2, massive games that you guys are very well known for, and games that you guys were really beholden to no one, except for maybe Kickstarter folk. With Baldur's Gate, Wizards of the Coast kind of owns the IP, and so are you guys having to go back and forth a lot when it comes to decisions? Are they pretty hands off? Like, what's that relationship like for you guys?
It's good. I mean, and in the sense, like most good relationships, there's a lot of trust that was built up when we started on it. So in the beginning, they were very hands-on, and then as the trust relationship evolved, they became hands-off, and they just let her do our thing. And so it's been evolving quite well, I have to say. I mean, you often hear as a developer horror stories of don't work with a licensor because they're going to want to control this and this,
Right.
and there's this entire committee. So we didn't get any of that. I mean, like when we started, we often said this in interviews, when we started working together, we sat in a room and they told us this is exactly like we're making a new tabletop campaign. It's literally the same process, the same thinking. We're coming up with the same ideas. So there was that instant click, and I think that's the reason we can make this game. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible, because there's so much iteration that happens as you're making it, and if you would have to go and check every single little thing, it would become impossible. So I got to say, it's and that part of BG3 development has actually been really, really good.
How did that relationship start?
Great to hear.
Did they come to you? Did you guys go to them? What did you meet in a room somewhere at E3? Like, what? How did that work out?
So I approached them for the very first time, and I was actually introduced by some of the guys from CDP to them. So the guys behind GOG. And I said, I want to make BG, and he says, well, I'll introduce you. And so my very first attempts were, I'm not going to say that they laughed at me, but they were politely declined. And I had just finished Original Sin 1. But the relationship was made. And so we kept on bumping into each other at trade shows. And there was like this, they have these good business developers, and they ask lots of questions. And so it was kind of like an exam. And then at some point, as we were making Original Sin 2, and I kept on telling them that I was interested in it, but I had given up hope, to be honest. I got a phone call from Nathan Stewart, who was the head of D&D, And so he said, why don't you come over to Seattle? We need to have dinner in a shady restaurant. And it was a shady restaurant, literally. So he showed me this big A3 printed PowerPoint. And so he said, I want to present this to my board. And it was BG3. And it had all of the things that we had talked about and all of the vision pillars, and says, what do you think? I said, it's like a good game. So he said, well, do you still want to make it? And so he offered some outlines of deal terms. And then I said, yeah, sure, let's do this. So he went to his board, they approved it. And then 9 horrible months later, we signed the deal because we had to go through all the hoops of making the actual deal. Or it was 6 or 9 months, I don't remember. So that's how that happened.
Were you a big D&D?
I gotta ask real quick. I gotta slide in
go
here.
ahead.
What was it like seeing that PowerPoint presentation when you realized like this might be happening? Like I might be doing Baldur's Gate 3.
Well, I had an inkling that this was what the conversation was going to be about because I had to fly from Belgium all the way to Seattle. So I did have an idea. But it was strange because the logo that he had printed on it was actually a remake of the original BG2 logo. So he had already built a logo for BG3, which actually was pretty cool. Not that far from what we ended up using, but back then there were no mind flayers in it. And so it was like everything about this relationship, it was natural, it just flowed very, very naturally. And I think that makes a lot of sense. If you see what we make, it's so close already to the tabletop. So the thinking had to be the same in what we're doing. So it felt like, just go. And it was ultimately, when you look back at it, it was very, very easy as we progressed. What hasn't been easy has been the size of the game, but that's a completely different story.
Right. Were you a big D&D fan before? Like, did you play as a kid? Did you play even before working on Baldur's Gate 3?
Not enough, and not as much as I would want it to. I've come from the Belgium seaside, and that's not necessarily the biggest group of D&D players back when I was a kid.
Sure.
But I bumbled on the Dragonlance novels, so that's how I got actually my introduction to it. So that was so I was a big fan of Raistlin and Cohh, as anybody that read Dragonlance, I guess. And so that's how I started discovering Forgotten Realms. And that's how I started. I understood there was a system behind it. And so that's how I discovered the system. Then I saw it pop up in games. That's how my interest got piqued. The game that I was playing back then was The Dark Eye, which was essentially the European ripoff of D&D, which came from Germany. So that was the very first tabletop that I had played. But I was very much into it. And as I was then playing video games, then all of the things started linking to each other. And so when I was starting to make my own RPGs, the Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition handbook was lying on my desk. And so that was the one that I was referring to for inspiration, shall we say. I think that the intellect devourers that you see now in BG3, in our very first RPG, LMK, they were called Dunnos. That was a straight ripoff from 2nd edition.
Everyone copies those monsters, right? Look at Final Fantasy. Yeah. The original Final Fantasy was just straight up ripoffs of that stuff. So
exactly. So it's there was a affinity in reading the books, playing a couple of games, not enough. So now I played more than I had played back then. But there was it inspired me as a whole, as the fact that there was this rule system, that there was this fantasy background, everything that was clicked with everything that I was interested in.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Now, just a fan question. Since you're a game director, do you find yourself, like, when you do like the tabletops role playing that you've done, do you find yourself inching more towards the DM or the player?
I DM. So that's literally what I do it with my kids also. So it's like I've picked up the trick that if you do it in the car with your kids, the ride is much shorter and it's a lot of fun. No, it is actually, right? I mean,
that's great. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it works very well. It's a very, very powerful formula. And so the only thing that's hard is maintaining all the stats in your heads of where they are. But it is actually, I advise it to everybody with kids.
Dude, that's
pretty good.
200 IQ, smart stuff. Yeah. Like, that's great.
Yeah. Never have thought about that.
That's a good
tip.
Yeah, try that. I actually ran some of the BG3 scenarios against my kids. So they didn't pan out exactly like they did in the game, but it was kind of cool to see where they took it. So it's like the last one I did, I left my son burning on the roof of a green hack. And then the holiday was over and we had to go back to work.
Sentences you never thought you'd say as a father.
Yeah, guys, let's not clip
I
that out
love
of
my son
context or
Bernie.
anything. Let's get back to the next question. Yeah. So my next question, then I want to let Zeke and Cohh take a little bit of the reins, but Larian fans know what to expect from a Larian game. I think when I first played Divinity Original Sin 2, when I kind of jumped in, it was remarkable how easy it was to just poke around and mess with things and to create really unique situations, and then to be rewarded for it. Oftentimes, I think a lot of games don't do that. So, with that said, is it more of the same for you guys with Baldur's Gate 3, or do you have to kind of change the DNA of what a Larian game is for an already established Baldur's Gate franchise?
It's a lot of things all in one question. So the Larian DNA is pretty much the tabletop. So in that sense, we don't have to change anything because it comes very naturally. We're very strong followers of systemic design. What we mean is we build systems and we build systems on top of systems, and then we let you fool around with the systems to overcome the challenges that we put in the game. Our scripters are forbidden from putting situations in that are on the rails, so they have to do everything with the systems because otherwise that formula doesn't work.
Huh.
And so, in that sense, it is it's a very natural thing. So, in the sense that when you look at the original Baldur's Gate games, they had systems, but they didn't have the systemic environmental interactions that we have and that we can do now also with modern technology. So we have all of those things that we put on top of it. I'll give you an example from I do these reviews. So I play the game and then I tell what I think, and then the team has to follow up on some of these things. Yesterday, I was dealing with in the Underdark. I'm approaching a temple that's heavily protected by some gargoyle heads that are shooting. I forgot what the solution was to the official solution to getting in. And so I cast fog cloud to hide myself in from the gargoyles, and their line of sight was broken, so I could actually bypass all of their tracks. And so I had two guys that were casting fog cloud next to fog cloud next to fog cloud, and like this, I managed to bypass the entire thing. I felt super happy, also very, very clever, so that I had managed to bypass the entire trap. Nobody on the design team had ever thought of that solution, but since they followed the systemic design principles, where they had to make sure, okay, the gargoyles have to obey line of sight. If they're blinded, they're not going to be able to see anything. You're walking in the fog. It's creating an obstruction, and like this, I could solve the thing. And that's literally what we're trying to put throughout the entire game. And like this, I have many examples. But I hope that you guys are going to discover them, and you'll for sure discover things that we didn't think of.
Yeah, I mean that's like D&D 101 right there, right? Is you get a person in there that addresses a situation completely opposite of what you would, and then as a party you have to figure out how to move forward, right? So to be able to have that in like video game form is really impressive and honestly really exciting for sure to jump into when early access launches later this month. But yeah, Cohh, Zeke, I've kind of hogged a lot of the questions. By all means, feel free to jump in.
I've got a lot of questions that are kind of more BG3 specific. So Zeke, if you have any questions kind of like about more overarching thing, feel free to jump in.
Well, I guess one of the questions that I had was, since this game has been made during it's kind of like a boom of streaming and stuff, does that like come into play when you're making a game like this?
Well, not as a fundamental concept to building the game, but we have a couple of opportunities that can really take advantage of the fact that people like watching other people play. And so what we did is we allowed the audience to basically decide what you have to choose inside of a dialogue, for instance. So we built an entire Twitch extension that you can plug in on Twitch. We have the Stadia integration also. And so you will be able to ask players to...
This is good.
Keep talking, Sven. This is great. Ooh, this is fantastic.
I can't wait for my chat to just kill me over and over again. It's been great. I'm sorry. Please continue.
Yeah, please continue.
Yeah. So you'll be able to say in dialogues where you say, okay, well, in this dialogue, I'm just going to let my audience decide, and then they'll just decide for you, and you'll have to go with it. There's a role of rolling of the dice in the game also. So, I'm not 100% sure if that's going to launch in early access, so I'll just shut up about it. But there's stuff that we've been putting in there that allows them to play with you. There's stuff that we want to do that we haven't actually done yet. So I hope that we're going to be able to do it because there's a lot of opportunity for audience interaction in an RPG like this. And so But I can tell you that if you remember in Original Sin 2, if you played it in multiplayer, you could listen in on other people's conversations, but it was like you just saw the dialogue. One of the big things that you have in BG3 now, and one of the things that I'm super proud of the team for having solved, is this is a cinematic game, right? So it has all the dialogues as cinematic. So when you're doing multiplayer and you listen in on somebody, you're basically watching a movie of the other guy playing, but you can also use that same group vote interaction by saying, no, I want you to select this one. I want you to select this one. And so like this, you get this really interactive narrative moments where both players are being, or all the entire group is much more dragged into the gameplay. And the first time I tried it out, I was like, literally like, this is so much better than what we did with DOS 2, where we tried to put both of the players or all of the players into the dialogue, but we didn't really manage people when they talked about their multiplayer narrative experience. It was always chaos, which was fine, which was fun, but they didn't follow, or they weren't into the story. And I think this time we have a much better chance of actually dragging people into the story also, just because you can experience all of it as you're listening into it. And so with the audience, then that's going to be interacting that. I hope you're going to get the same thing. So you're going to get that bond, like it's your adventure. We put so much permutation in the game, so all those things are going to go in all the kinds of different directions, and so that should be fun. And then the dice will roll, right? So
yeah,
you'll see what happened with that.
Have you guys? You mentioned the Twitch extension. Have you guys thought about doing a Twitch plays Baldur's Gate 3 stream?
I personally haven't, but I guess that is my publishing team probably thought of it. My focus has been on
just
getting
get
the
an intern to move the character around, and every single option is voted on by Twitch chat.
Yeah.
And then all
great.
Well, you just have to switch it on, and then that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And then you can also, with the Twitch extension, you can watch your inventories and all the classic stuff, and watch the characters, the stats, and so forth. So
wow,
it should be cool.
That's crazy.
That'd be good. Man,
so it's going to be the kind of thing where a viewer, I was going to say, like, a viewer can drop into my DOS2 playthrough, and there will be ways that he can like look at my characters and check their stats and look at the inventory and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's the good stuff.
So that's the good stuff.
No longer will we have to be like, can you open your character sheet? I want to see how your characters. What spells did you?
I was going to say, you throw into that system the ability for them to check our quest log, so they can see what we've done and haven't done, and you're done.
Journal?
That's going to be like that's going to be the best you can get right there. Oh my lord, dude!
I can't. I want to shut because
people you don't have to ask like, in your chat.
Yeah. Hey, you forgot. You got to do that spider thing. You got to go do that spider thing right now. True. You're gonna miss out on it. Well, it'll just be bugging Zeke, me the whole fucking time.
Let's be real. You should have remembered to do the spider thing.
It's true. Don't forget the spider thing, Zeke.
Go ask a good question now. Your turn. Go.
Okay.
I want to hear it.
Okay. So, I have some more kind of like specific to Baldur's Gate 3 stuff. How is language going to work in the game? Will everyone be able to converse with everyone? Are we going to come across characters who we can't interact with because we may not know their language or anything like that?
No, we chose to have everybody speak common. So just to keep our own sanity, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it was, we fooled around with it in the beginning because it was a very obvious one. Oh yeah, we're going to do all these things and we're going to hide it, and you have to learn the language. But when you'll play it, you'll start understanding the sheer amount of permutations that we have already. And that was just going to be a bridge too far for us. So it's all common. I'm sorry.
Makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think that makes
another
sense.
Another kind of rapid fire technical question. Have you guys decided on an amount of like a set amount of controllable characters that the players will have access to? And does that number change throughout the course of the story?
So we opted for a base party of 4, but you do get followers that you can add to on top of that, and then so that extends it. It's not that the engine limits it, so I'm pretty sure that you'll see mods come out that are going to allow you to have 6 characters, for instance. So we know that's a big thing. There's a lot of fans that want to play it with 6, but we think, and so that is our design one. We think that with a party of 4, we can provide you a better balancing, better level of control, because you have to manage all of these characters also. So it's like where we think the sweet spot is. But we on purpose made sure that the UI can handle more. So if people want to mod it away, they'll be free to do so.
Yeah, awesome.
Cool.
Talking about a little bit about balance, you just brought it up. I I think fifth edition, and for those that have played a lot of fifth edition D&D, they're aware of certain, let's say, imbalances or power gaming. In essence, has kind of always existed with certain class combinations, race combinations, or just in general classes being so much stronger at level 5 than other classes, etc. How do you guys balance that? And has Wizards helped with any of that at all, or is it kind of you guys figuring it out on your own?
We had conversations about certain things, like the Ranger class is like the really good example of it, because they were aware of certain issues with the Ranger and they were experimenting. And so our guys were experimenting also. And the default process was very similar, so there was quite a lot of interaction around that. But other than that, we are. You will see differences. For instance, I was just I didn't realize the reasoning behind it, so I'm just going to repeat what he said. So I was with my lead system designer Nick, and we were interviewing some playtesters about how their play session had been. And so one of the playtesters said, "Well, I noticed that Firebolt is not 1d10; it is 1d6." And then Nick said, "Yeah, it's 1d6 because you also get a small AOE damage out of it because it's going to create a little fire surface because we want to be able to put things on fire." And so you got little changes like that are being done to the system because they make more sense in the video game.
Yeah.
And like this, we're fooling around. But early access, to be honest, is going to be a major source of balancing info for us because we're tracking everything. When people start the early access, please click yes and send us the analytics because that is where we will see most of our balancing data. Right now, it's still a limited group of playtesters against which we're basing the balancing. Later on, we will hopefully have a larger that we can use to get that data from. And that's going to be, at the end of the day, is going to be the one that's going to inform what the final values will be that you'll find in it. And it's likely that at that moment you will see more things like the little difference I just illustrated across the entire game as we start seeing, okay, these classes like Guiding Bolt, for instance, right now, it feels way overpowered. Like you get 4
It's strong ability, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty strong. Like if a party of clerics just waltzes through, so that's the thing that it's cool. Like I like it, but it's the kind of stuff that we have to fix.
Yeah. Also,
But not too much.
So
for all the D&D nerds there, Fire Bolt was 1d6, not Ball. Fireball is much higher, is according to
It's my accent.
Bolt. Yeah. Go ahead, go.
So, kind of in line with what you were talking about, have there been, similar to the Fireball thing, have there been any implementations or mechanics that have really kind of surprised you when converting them from the pen and paper to the game? Like kind of maybe any really cool side effects or things where you've gone, how are we going to do this, or anything like that?
Well, yeah, so Light and Dark is one that works really well. So we call it Light and Dark, but it's basically use the shadows to increase your chance of not being seen. And so that works really well in stealth because we actually managed to use the actual shadows of the game for that, which was quite a technical achievement, actually. So it's very, very cool. It's very natural. So you're lightly obscured, you're heavily obscured, together with dark vision, that and all of those things working on each other. Then the abilities to manipulate that with light, creating darkness. So these are fantastic things to go around with. One of the things that we were very worried about when we started out was classes like the Fighter or the Rogue, which start out very light with not too much to do in the opening part of the game. So we were worried that we were going to have to invent a whole bunch of new ability actions for them so that they we're going to have something to do, because if you're the fighter and then the other guy is the wizard and he has plenty of stuff to do and you're just like, well, yeah, these are my limited moves. But that all in all, actually, we had to do stuff, but not as much as I expected that we were going to have to do. So it did translate better than I had expected. And that dominantly because we allowed you to find advantage in the environment. So like taking verticality into account, or sneaking or surprising enemies, or indeed creating distractions. Those kind of things, they kind of worked well. So so that was a pleasant surprise to a certain extent. So and then when again the same thing essentially, because we had just made Original Sin 2 where you can do a lot of stuff, right? There's really a lot of things that you can do. And so since this is class based, we said, okay, well, the classes are very limited in their action economy. They're very limited in what they're going to have compared to what you have those two. Will players not feel like, hey, this is a game that limits me compared to a game that gave me lots of things? But that's certainly once you start hitting level 3, level 4 is not a concern anymore. We're seeing players come up with all kinds of strategies and interactions and like saying, hey, that's clever. And like really, really cool, clever stuff, actually. We have a guy, a companion, that when you kill him, he starts having necrotic aura around him. And so we saw a guy that was starting to on purpose send the guy into combat, killing him, letting him be killed, and then just throwing him around because you can throw bodies in the game. So,
nice.
So it's yeah. So not necessarily what we. So I guess the necrotic damage is going to be limited because it wasn't necessarily the tactic that we want you to play across the game. But it's kind of cool to see those kind of things emerge from the toolbox that we're giving.
We're talking mostly about balance around classes and like player choices. Talking about balance from like enemy and you know, D&D has this creature rating attached to almost all of its monsters, really all of its monsters throughout the game. Did you guys use that as a
challenge rating?
Sorry,
JP.
challenge rating.
I was going to say it.
You're correct. You're correct. I'm just going to say you're correct. I'm not. We'll tell the story maybe another time. Challenge rating. Did that guide any of kind of where you throw those monsters in at, or you guys bending the rules on that?
We started listening to this challenge rating. How shall I say it? I can't think of the word. Okay, so in the beginning, we stuck very hard to what the challenge rating of a creature was, but we did learn not to do that anymore. So we have made modifications. So we have some house rules, and that's one of the places where we have been changing things. Dominantly to keep things interesting, and modern audiences want things to be very fast-paced in a video game. So not that this is a super fast-paced video game, but you do want to have from encounter to encounter, you want to see different things. And when you're playing the tabletop, you maybe have 2 encounters in one night. But when you're playing the video game, you're having quite a lot of encounters. So you want to have a lot of variation in what you're seeing. So that has caused us to fool around a little bit with challenge rating. We have also, from playtesting, we learned that we have to show some kind of concept of level, because audiences are so used to the concept of a level. So we are showing a level. We're not showing the CR, we're just showing a level that more or less corresponds. Like, okay, you're supposed to be this level when you're going to be confronting this creature. So we did deviate from the standard there, but for good reasons, because we started by saying, okay, this is CR 4, for instance, and it didn't work as well as we had hoped.
Sure. Yeah, I think DMs struggle with that as well on a consistent basis. So it makes sense. It makes sense for sure. We've mentioned early access a lot. I want to talk about just the concept of early access and take a step back. What does that mean to you and to Larian and really as developers? What do you guys look at early access that maybe other companies or other devs or potentially other players look at early access?
Well, it's been very good for us. Original Sin 1 wouldn't be Original Sin 1 without early access. Neither would Original Sin 2 be Original Sin 2 without early access. So don't change the winning formula, I guess. That's probably the very first thing. We feel very comfortable in early access. So we know it takes extra stress on development, but we take that in a positive way. It motivates us and it challenges us also. The audience is critical, rightfully so. But our aim is to try to make the best possible game. So critical audiences help us achieve that. So we essentially embrace it, and like it's literally it's what I tell the devs also all the time. Like, we embrace early access with all of its warts that come with it, but there's really good stuff that you get from early access also, and the fact that people buy into the game, that allows them to. They're very already bonded to the actual experience, and so you get really good feedback coming out of players. So it's for us, and I know there's other stories out there, but for us, it's been so far it's been a good experience. Maybe it'll change, I don't know, but I wouldn't actually want to release a game without having gone through the early access inferno, if you want.
Sure.
Because it's baptism by fire, and your game only gets better out of it. Everything that is not good about it, you'll know, right? So, and then the audience will scream about it, and then it's up to you. But that's then the beauty about the early access, in a sense. Certainly for Original Sin 2, it was the case. And for Original Sin 1, it gave you the finance to actually make those changes also. Because if people bought into the game and they started demanding changes, and then if you just reinvested that money into your game, that led to a better game, and better games to this date and age, they sell better. And so
you
got this nice feedback loop going on. So for us, it worked really well. So I'm a fan.
Do you think that
It's definitely nice, as many companies use early access kind of just as a marketing tool or
right?
a
Yeah.
buzzword, kind of like alpha and beta have become over the last couple decades, where it's not really an alpha and beta at all. It's just a demo that they're trying to sell. So yeah, it's cool, especially to see those heat maps in the last presentation of the death maps and everything,
Yeah,
and how you guys kind of utilize that to make the game better. It's
yeah.
good to know that is still very much going on.
Do you guys find yourself? I mean, Cohh just kind of hit the nail on the head there. Do you find yourself up against a wall sometimes to people that maybe aren't in the Larian ecosystem when it comes to early access? Do you kind of have to teach players like, no, like this is not just a marketing gimmick for us, right? Like we're actively making changes and reinvesting funds, like you just said, back into the game. Is that something you guys find yourself having to do?
Yeah, well, it's a conversation we had on DOS 1, right? So, I mean, like, and it's one we expect to have for BG3 also. Like, BG3 is going to be a $59.99 game because it's big production. And I think DOS 2 was $44.99, so it was lower. So we'll get a lot of questions about that. And you're there ask that kind of money for a game that's going into early access. But the amount of investment that we're putting into this entire thing is like so much higher than anything that we've ever done. Like DOS 2, DOS 1 plus each together, multiplied multiple times, is not even going to get you BG3. So there's so much stuff that's going into that. And so the fact that discussion is going to come up, that's something that we're ready for. When DOS 1 came out, it was $39.99, and people were saying like that's too expensive for an early access game. And then with DOS 2, $44.99, it was that's too expensive for an early access game. So it's a discussion that you can that you're going to have, and so this is something that we're going to be dealing with.
Cohh, you mentioned those heat maps. You guys showed this during the panel from Hell, but I want to show it again just for people that hadn't seen it. So explain what we're seeing right here, Sven.
So you see where, I think this is a death map. So this is basically where people are dying. So the red spots are where people are basically dying when they are doing combat.
Now, as a developer, what is that? How do you translate this into like meaningful changes for the game? I guess because this is all early access death from Divinity Original Sin 2, right?
So if a fight is on a critical path and we see that everybody's dying there, we will probably make it easier. If it's a fight that's off a critical path and it's something where we want to reward you for having gone through a certain challenge, we want to make it harder in general. So it's basically, okay, you're going to get an extra reward for doing something that's off the path. So we might make it harder here. If it's a fight that's just all blue, then it means, okay, this is a walkover fight. Is it intended to be a walkover fight? If not, then we're going to make it harder. So, and like this, these heat maps basically show us a lot about how the game is doing. And so every single time when you're working with the early access audience, what we do is we experiment on them, if you want, almost like they're willing guinea pigs. So we're very open about it. We will experiment with you. Sure. We're going to try new systems. We're going to try new content on you, and we'll see what happens. And then we see it in our maps. And this is how we iterate ourselves towards a better game over time.
What are you guys tracking? Anything else besides death via like a heat map scenario?
Everything.
Just death.
Just death.
That's
is it only just death?
No, everything. So we are tracking your choices and dialogues. So are there certain paths that nobody's taking them? Is it the intention that they never take them? What are you buying? Right? Are you buying certain gear? If you see that you're buying 10,000 potions, maybe it's a little bit too hard. It's not the intention that you buy 10,000 potions. How many times do you rest? Right? So are you going to look for long rests continuously? Maybe we made it a little bit too hard. So literally everything that you're doing in the game is being tracked. How did you walk over the game? So we can track the route that you took. All right. So and so sometimes we can tweak things just with a very little thing, like we just have to put a light somewhere so that you see it. And like I have there's a part in the game right now that contains 2 dungeons, and literally none of our playtesters have actually explored these dungeons. Literally none. Right. And so that means that the access point to that dungeon is too hard. They can't find it. Right. So maybe the DC is too high. Maybe it's just not clear on the map that you can click there. And so then we do little things, and then we see, this has been solved. No people are entering this dungeon. And so that's the kind of stuff that we need to have. And then in a game which has so much freedom, with so much permutations, we also need to figure out, okay, they're going to use all of these systems. There's something that breaks as a result of that. So we need to know that also, because so we're not necessarily looking for bugs, for instance, that our testers can do and our play testers can do, but we're looking for systems that break because players are coming up with crazy things, and then we'll try to make it possible for them. We're looking for balancing information. So how can we better balance the game? And that is essentially the goal of the entire exercise.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure
Very cool.
all of that is super helpful in ways that players wouldn't even really imagine. So it's cool to hear that stuff. I think a lot of times people, like I said, see early access and think, oh, this is just, it means they're not finished with the game yet. So they want to put it out and get money for it. And that's it. Right. Like, in this case, you guys are getting like meaningful information and being open about it.
You're shaping the game.
Yeah.
Like the people that play early access will kind of like they're sculptors in a lot of way to help you guys make the game. That's super cool. That is super cool.
Yeah. And it'll take us some time also. So it'll be busy for quite some time before we're actually going to release 1.0 of the game.
Yeah.
So we're not done yet. Let's put it that.
Sure. Yeah. Zeke?
I've had more than a couple of people ask me about a single player experience as far as going through the game as one like PC and stuff like that. Is that something you can
Lone Wolf.
Yeah, Lone Wolf style.
We had a lot of from the playtesters. We had a lot of people ask us. So right now it's not available, but I'm pretty sure that's one of the things that will come in. Like it's like our playtesters already have been asking, "Can I Lone Wolf the game?" So I can imagine us coming up with which ways of doing that. It's not in there yet.
So
yeah, makes sense.
Another quick one to slide in here, since kind of BG specific. Got two quick BG specific ones. You probably have a lot of experience, kind of just play testing and trying the different things, given your position and everything. Have any of the classes really stuck out to you as kind of like, oh, this is my main. This is me, like in the game? Have any of them kind of just have you really fixated on any of them and found them to be like really, really enjoyable for you? Not overall, but just for you.
Yeah, but I have a very standard classic answer to that. I always play Wizard no matter what the game is. So I play Wizard at BG3 and it works really well.
I love you. Are we brothers?
Zeke plays wizards in games where there aren't even wizards, like in Bloodborne and stuff like that.
Yeah, he'll try to make a wizard for sure.
Yeah. It's no. I like having lots of stuff that I can do. Right.
Oh, and also, so a second question. Many of us like to be completionists. We like to do everything we can do in a single run, kind of make that whole big narrative story in kind of one novel for ourselves. Is this the kind of game where we're going to be told and have a really good idea when we're hitting points of no return or areas when we're going to be making a decision that may not allow us to do other content? Or is it going to be the kind of thing where you want it to be immersive and have our decisions and have us feel that stuff out instead of having it thrown in our face?
So you will never be able to do everything in one run. That's for sure. And there's some really big decision points that are not going to be thrown in your face that you're going to discover. But as you discover them, they will lock off a whole bunch of other content also as you do them. And you'll be surprised by how that goes, because normally this is the type of thing that's advertised big in a game. Here you just will stumble upon it. You say, well, here's an interesting decision, and you make it. And then when you'll see the amount of different content that flows out of it, I think I hope you'll be impressed, because a lot of work went into it. And the payoffs of that, also a lot of work went into it. So one of the things that we learned from our previous games that we haven't done as much is the epilogue of something is equally important. So it's not just here's a quest reward, but you then have to have all the narrative that goes there to create the emotional arcs that go with it. So a lot of effort went into to make it meaningful. Exactly. So a lot of effort went into the game and putting that in there. Like an insane amount of effort, actually, if you think about it, especially when you see how many permutations you get to get to certain things. And so it's something I'm very proud of, and the content that's in there. So I'm very curious to see all of the outcomes. So I'm telling people, like, if you do early access and you know that's going to be an experience that's going to end at some point prematurely, do something that you would never do when you play the full game, right? So just try something out, because I have faith in the game is going to give you a completely different experience when you're going to try it on the 1.0. So you'll start early access, and so the easiest one for most people, because pretty much nobody plays evil. So just go full evil. Just go full evil. And well, I know there's, but I mean, I just try going full evil and see what happens, right? And then try to do the exact opposite, and then just see what happens also, and you'll get a different experience if we do our jobs properly.
To pick on that statement a little bit, no one plays evil. Is that a historically proven stat for you guys for like Divinity Original Sin 2? Was everyone a goody two shoes or?
Well, and those two, to be honest, didn't have that much evil options with consequences narratively. Like it
Sure.
did allow you to murder everybody. I mean, the BG3 allows you to murder everybody also, but try to do the narrative options here. We see it. If we don't tell people, they don't do it. I mean, like we take stats of our playtesters, and like they come in and they're going to be the good human, right? And so they're just going to be nice, and
Sure.
they can, especially because it's no cinematic also, because you get all the facial expressions, the emotions that are coming in it, and people just naturally want to be the good guy. But this is also one of the reasons why we're shipping early access with 5 companions. We have more companions that are going to be releasing, but those companions they tend to be either neutral or evil. So the good companions are coming later, and so we're pushing people a little bit in a certain direction, because you got that thing going on. Oh, Shadowheart doesn't approve of this. All right, well, I thought I was doing well here, but what am I going to do now? She doesn't approve of it, and she's very vocal about it. And so, and that's going to be interesting to see also. And then what will be really interesting for us is that when we'll drop one of the good characters in there, does this change things? Does it happen? Does it have an impact? So there's a whole bunch of stuff that I'm very curious to see that we're going to get hopefully from EA.
Are you guys? Maybe this is for you personally. If there's a tone, like a one-word tone or something for Baldur's Gate 3, and I'll have this scene playing in the background. What's the tone of Baldur's Gate 3 going to be like if this is already being shown, where you're just lobotomizing a dude and then the brain comes alive because then intellect devour? Spoilers.
Yeah, good God, this scene.
What is
Woo.
like? Where are we doing? Where are we going with Baldur's Gate 3? Is this going to be a super dark game?
If you wanted to.
Okay.
So evil is being rewarded in the sense that it has this narrative consequences in the game, and it's not necessarily a bad path for you to take. Right? Evil bad path, but it gets progressively worse as you progress through the game. So there's a point where you say, "No, I'm not going to do that." Hopefully, if you're a decent person, but if you role play evil characters, which an RPG should allow you to do, then you can just go down the path of darkness, and then you're going to be doing very, very dark things. Maybe you're the guy that is going to be creating a whole bunch of people like that, and just opening their brains and then manipulating them, and making them do what you want them to do instead of leaving them with their free will. Maybe.
Maybe.
Can I just say, whoever decided in this scene to have the guy's face twitch as like, oh my God, man. Oh, wow. You can actually look, if you look at the face during that scene, you'll see like his eyebrows every so often go and his mouth will move around and it'll like kind of like almost smile at one point. It's, his eyes move. Yeah, no.
Ice cream! I'm gonna get some ice cream!
Oh man. Shout out to the artists that have to get some reference images to make this stuff in a game, because that's tough job. Not a fun part, or maybe it is. I don't know. To each their own.
No, they have a lot of fun. I mean, this is our cinematic team and our cinematic guy. Right? There's a lot of people. This is a really nice scene because it shows pretty much all of the disciplines that we have work together to create something. Going from the writer who started with the ID, the scripter who actually came up with the original ID for it. So the writer then executing it. Then you have the riggers, the animators, the modelers, the programmers, obviously also the lighting, cinematic artists, the voice directors, like pretty much everybody. I'm forgetting a bunch, but pretty much all of the team coming together just to create something like what you're seeing here. And for us, it's really cool because when we started out on it, we had our intro, the CGI that you've seen. And so one of the goals was like, let's try to get as close as we can in game to what we show in the CGI as we're progressing through development. And if you look at all the footage that we released, you can see us getting closer and closer to that goal. And we haven't finished yet, so we're still progressing on that front. And when I saw the scene finished for the first time, I was like sitting there and I said, "Wow, guys, now we're getting somewhere." Because this is an RPG with so much dialogue, and it's being brought to you in this way, and it's probably it's cool.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people, it's seeing things that different permutations of things that may have happened in their own campaigns, just in playing D&D themselves. And so to see that finally represented like a video game is a long time coming, I think, for a lot of people. Speaking of like 5th edition campaigns, how many in-house 5th edition campaigns have started there at Larian because of working on Baldur's Gate 3?
So pretty much every studio has multiple campaigns running and that are played every week. COVID intervened, so they played online a little bit, but not as much, I think, as what's happening in the team itself. So I would reckon, I think like 10 to 15, something like that, different campaigns running at the same time.
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah. And that would be about my guess. Maybe somewhere there.
Makes sense. It makes sense.
Just imagine some guy is like, oh, God, I had a hard day at work today. I had to play Dungeons and Dragons for 5 hours today, man. I am just I'm bushed. You know? What a great life, though, right?
It has its perks. It has its perks.
Yeah.
Technical question I wanted to ask that someone in my chat was asking, or a couple people. There's a level cap in the early access, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Is there one in game?
Yes, of course.
Like the full release?
Well, yeah. There's you. Is the question? Can you play up to level 20?
Yeah.
So.
Basically.
So no,
you read my mind. Yeah, that's what I want to know.
you can't play it because level 20. That's like the godlike.
You're God. Yeah.
And that makes it the environment that we would have to. Yeah, I understand
that. That's a DLC where you're fighting 20 dragons at once, 20 red.
Just wish spells left and right.
I know. It's so no, but what I can tell you is that the level cap that we originally announced is going to be increased, however. So one of the things that came out of our playtests is that we needed to accelerate the curve because D&D leveling is very slow. And the problem that I told you about earlier, where we were afraid that people wouldn't have enough actions to pick from in the beginning of the game, that did materialize itself a little bit because initially the curve was very slow. So in accelerating it, we increased the feedback of the playtesters that they liked it much more. And so in doing so, that meant that we have to push the end part of that also a little bit higher. Otherwise, it's not going to work out. So it's going to be higher. Exactly how high, I don't know yet. We're still building it. So, but it's not. Yeah,
makes sense. You've brought up COVID multiple times in terms of the development process and how it's impacted that. And I think it's kind of the easy question is, what are some of the ramifications in a negative sense for COVID? But are you seeing any things that you've never seen in game development come from people having to not work in an office, go to a 9 to 5 every single day, people kind of existing in their own world at all times? Is there any benefit to that you've seen? Or is COVID just a nightmare in general?
I think it's a nightmare in general for everyone, but I mean, so initially there was some hope actually that it, because of the nature of our jobs, it was going to work out quite well, but that hope has been it's been slashed. One of the things that's really important in game development is communication. So if there's one problem that you will hear every game developer talk about, and there's going to be like, communication could be better. The reason for that is that we have to make a million decisions about a game. There's so much small things that need to come together to get you that entire experience. And so it just takes more time when you have to do it over video chats. So it's like in the beginning, we saw benefits because people could work in a more focused manner. But they had this big, what my technical director called an information buffer. So they had a lot of information in the back of their heads about how things were going to be. But as time progressed, they started losing that information buffer. And so the leads had to spend more and more and more time on briefings and being the bridge between different teams. And so that slowed down because they also have kids, they also have a life. And so they got drained into that. And so you started seeing a general slowdown of everything and miscommunication, actually. And so as a result of that, development started slowing down. So that was problematic. Now we're lucky over here. I mean, like we still have COVID, but the numbers are not that high. We can actually work in offices again. So that has benefited. And you could see that shift also. You could see, I don't think we would ship early access if we would have to do it all working from home. I don't see how we would do it, actually. Or maybe we would, but it would be with a lot of compromise, and not necessarily compromise we would want to make.
Sure. Makes sense. I'm kind of good in terms of my general list of questions. Zeke or Cohh, you guys got any outliers or outstanding stuff you guys want to ask before we most likely wrap up the interview here?
Oh, I'm great. This has been phenomenal. Just a huge thank you for your time. I think I speak for many, many folks when I say how excited we are to see this vision. And yeah, just can't wait. Can't wait.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Cohh.
dude. I'm glad that I got to hear you say there's gonna be some Twitch extension integration. Like that is gonna be a fucking hoot. I can't wait.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal for streamers for sure.
For a game of this size and depth, I mean, many of us are going to be streaming this game 50, 60, 70, as many hours as we can get out of it. So having that kind of information available to viewers' fingertips is going to be huge. That's going to be great.
For sure.
Well,
I've seen a handful of questions from chat, so I'll just kind of rattle them off. Any mention or Iron Man mode? Is that going to be something like permadeath? Is that something you guys want to mess around with?
Not on early access, but for sure we will be having that on 1.0 release. It's something that often people ask. Make it as hard as you can, so that's a almost a standard by now, I would say.
Sure. Respecking, how's that kind of handled in the game, or is it handled in the game? Are decisions that final when it comes to character choices, or how you
It's a
guys
really
handling
good one. It's a really good question. So we have a narrative mechanic that we're putting in there to allow you to respec, because we know that if we're not going to do it, we're going to be bombarded during early access by questions for respecking, because at the same time, it's not necessarily the thing that you would do. So we're going to put it in there optionally. It's not part of early access 1.0. So so early access 1.0 is the release version of early access,
right?
and 1.0 is the actual release. So I'm misspeaking a little bit here. So it's not going to be there when we release it on 30th of September, but it will be added over time. An ability to respec, because we can predict that it's going to be asked. The big one that's going to be asked actually is something that we introduced in Original Sin, is like when you recruit somebody and they are a cleric by nature and by story, but you are already a cleric. Do you want another cleric in the party, or are you going to change your own character just to be able to recruit the cleric? So we need to give you something there, because you don't know up front who you're going to be encountering. So I think there's going to be quite a crowd that's going to want to be able to respec.
That's a great point.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you don't want more than one cleric in the party, because that just becomes a joke. Like, like a priest, a rabbi, and a minister, like that. It's just gonna be too wacky. You can't have that.
It's too easy. Yeah. I think combat in 5th edition just has so many different rules from a official standpoint, and you guys are putting a lot of those in there. One of the ones that a lot of people in chat are asking about are reactions. Are reactions going to be something that comes into play in the kind of second to second combat?
Yeah. So there are different implementations of reactions, because you have different types of reactions that are in the game. There's some with which we're still struggling. So there's others that are easier to put in there. So we have a bunch of them implemented, not all. So not everything is going to be able to be put on a reaction yet, but that is going to be a focus of the further development after we do the early access release. So expect some reactions, not all of them, but expect more to be added as we continue development.
Gotcha. Baldur's Gate throwbacks. I'm not going to ask the specific questions, but returning characters, major characters in D&D. What? Yes, no, maybe. Where are we going with that?
No, there's references, and there's returning characters from BG2 that you're going to see in BG3. So there's links, strong links actually.
Sure. Okay. Cool. Well, I guess one of my final questions is D&D, especially when you get to the higher levels, especially for someone that like yourself who plays wizards, spells get really weird in terms of how they actually affect, the tabletop game. Are we going to have those weird spells in game? Like how weird are we getting essentially?
Yeah, so we're not going to be able to put everything in there for the reasons that you just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, they'd be game breaking, right? Like there's no way to design around it essentially.
Yeah, exactly. But that said, we do like stuff that is weird. So we do like putting weird stuff, and we like to over deliver on these things also. So when you're saying like there's no way they're going to put that in, that's typically the designers are going to take that as a challenge. Like, yeah, maybe, but maybe we can make it work. So you'll see as you get there. But that is, early access has a level cap of level 4, so you're not going to get too weird yet.
Yeah, not too crazy.
You'll still be able to do pretty cool things, actually.
Yeah,
more than you expect, I think.
Divinity had some pretty insane items D&D has some pretty insane items. Can we expect to see some classic stuff in there, like Deck of Many Things? Are we going that route? Are you going to leave that stuff out? Are you going to leave that up to the player to find and not tell us?
The latter, actually.
Okay.
We have some really cool ones that are planned that are not in yet. But there is one which is the mother of all exploits that is going to make it. So I really, really like it. So, but I'll let you discover it for yourselves, because I could tell you stories about it already. But I would spoil it for you, and you're going to have so much fun when you discover it, and then when it's going to click, then you're going to have so much more fun with it. So I don't want to spoil it, but I'm very eager to spoil it because it's super cool.
So what
Dude,
we're going
I
to need to do
love
is
how
have you
many
on Battle
people-
Frames after the release, and then we can talk about all those spoilers.
Yeah. Well, my mind immediately is going like, well, it could be that item, or it could be this item, or maybe that item.
That's exactly what I was like.
Yeah.
I wonder what Chet thinks is like the biggest exploit in the game, because we're gonna get 50 different opinions, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like
I just want to be able to take a bag and just put it over someone, and then they're in a portable hull or a bag of holding, and they're sent to another dimension, and that's it. And then they're gone.
They become an inventory item in that bag.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be fantastic. You could just take your character out of the bag. Yeah, that type of stuff would be, or can be, crazy. Modding. You mentioned modding. Is the ability to like mod some of those crazy spells, or to have people have the chance to take a stab at some of the absurdity that exists in D&D?
So we have modding ambitions for it. The problem is that we had to shift resources to be able to actually make the full game, because our modding support is going to be a little bit lagging, but it's going to come. So we're not going to be able to give it all on 1.0, but it's coming. I mean, like, it's just that I think it's no secret. I speak for my entire team. This game is a bit bigger than we anticipated. So,
It sounds it sounds massive.
It's much bigger than we originally planned for, but it's fine. I mean, like, I always say, there's a grammar to a game, and when it starts speaking to you, and so this one started talking to us and telling us what it needs, and so we're just not essentially just feeding it so that it gets what it needs, and so early access is part of that also. And I think that's how you can make your best possible game. So it's not that we don't know what we're going to be making, but there's so much more that it says that, well, you should also allow us to do this and allow us to do this. Otherwise, it's not full. It's an experience. So like this, it's a very hungry beast. Let's put it that way.
When you said that, I got this little Shop of Horrors Seymour thing in my head where it's like one of the mind players. I need more development. Give me more tentacle.
Yeah, well, it's actually pretty much like this. Designers have this tendency of going like, oh, I can do this and this and this, and then somebody says, but you won't be able to do that, and then you get the puppy eyes and says, why can't I do this? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
And so it's I mean, we know pretty much what's going to go in there, but it's it's just been more. I mean, but it was necessary also to make it fun. I mean, part of the entire D&D experience is just a sheer insane amount of things that you can use your creativity on to overcome what you encounter in the game. And if you don't have that sheer amount in there, you're not going to get that feeling. And so we just thought it was going to be a little bit less, but it turns out to be quite a lot. And then supporting all of the classes from PHP, from Player Handbook, that is actually there's a lot. You know, like when you see that list of all these spells and the actions and bonus actions and things that you can do, and then you have to start implementing them. Every single thing about this game is a long list. Like, there's no aspect of this game that I could just tell you. Like, it's just a long list. It's always long, and they tend to get longer even.
Yeah.
So there you go. So hopefully you're going to discover at least parts of these long lists, because that's the other cool part. Nobody knows what part of the list they're going to see, because it depends on your playthrough completely.
Yeah. Zeke, I think you're going to ask something. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had just kind of like a general question. Picture someone is going to sit down and play Baldur's Gate 3 for the first time. Is there like a piece of knowledge or a piece of advice or something that you impart upon them that you would if you were sitting there like, I'm going to play Baldur's Gate 3? Like, if there's certain games that I would say, hey, one thing before you begin, failing is a part of this game. So if you die, it's okay. It happens to everybody. You just restart. Yeah. What would you say about Baldur's Gate?
Go with the dice. So trust the dungeon master. Yeah. So don't start reloading because you didn't like the outcome of the dice. we've seen we had the playtesters. They had this tendency. Oh, I don't really like this. Like I failed this thing because the dice didn't go in my direction. Just go with it. I mean, like we have you covered, regardless of what you're going to do. Right. So,
The whole chat erupted because this is a notorious right here. This guy right here is notorious save scummer. He save scums everything. And the chat just exploded.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Can you?
I don't think I've ever. Oh God!
Can in the early
You know
access,
it's bad when
just track reloads just for Cohh. No one
We
else.
do.
Just okay. You do. There you go. And then every time it reloads, say this is your 743rd reload, Cohh. Are you sure you want to?
I look at my chat and I see the official in exile entertainment of Wasteland 3 is like, we see you, Cohh, right now.
Oh man.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a.
Look, I might have reloaded a couple times, but maybe we'll change that for Baldur's Gate 3. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, you might. Yeah. I mean, I understand that you're not happy, but it's the best way of experiencing it. Actually, I mean, like a lot of effort went into making sure that all those permutations work off each other. And you'll see things that you don't expect to see if you roll with the dice. That's the cool part about it. So sometimes failure is better than succeeding because it allows you to do or allows you to see things that you would never in your life select, but you get a different adventure as a result of it. So and that is really cool about it. And there's a lot of dice rolls. So if you're going to save scum on all of them, good luck. It's not going to work out.
Yes. That is
I
a wonderful piece of advice. That's honestly great.
I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff. Also, Cohh feels very targeted and is telling me to wrap the interview up now. He's got to go.
He's talking to his IT guys like, can we just get a dice rolling bot to make me succeed every time?
So how extensive is the modding? And can we mod dice rolls asking for a friend?
Oh god.
You got inspiration points. I mean, like if you're going to do the really cool stuff, you're going to get an inspiration point from the game also, so you can use those. We don't have a limit on them, so you can stack them up.
Yeah.
So you can stack up inspiration points. So it's a bit of a deviation, but it's pretty cool. But you have to do really, really, really cool things to earn them.
Okay.
You can stack inspiration.
What a
that
profound
sounds
idea.
like a good idea.
Man, inspiration. How long did you guys? We're running a little bit over, so this is probably one of the final questions. But inspiration is one of those things that 5th edition players and DM specifically struggle with. How long did you guys spend on like what you wanted inspiration to mean in Baldur's Gate 3?
Well, we wanted to reward you for doing things and exploring things that you would ordinarily not do. So that's luckily we have a lot of those things inside of the game. So like there's a I'm not going to spoil it. I mean, like it would be ridiculous to spoil it. But there's our scripters are very good, I think, at coming up with edge cases. Like because we give you all this freedom that creates a lot of edge cases. Like so, typically any situation will have 20 to 30 edge cases and special cases. A lot of them we've solved systemically, but there's a whole bunch of them that they have to do manually. And so often they come up with a crazy edge case in there. Also, what if I were to do this and this and this? Like I'll give you a simple example. We showed this on the stream. And you have this gnome that is on a windmill, and he's hanging, and the goblins are torturing him, and he's turning around, and you can save that gnome. So what if you were to do gust of wind on that gnome? What's going to happen, right? So the windmill will start going faster, and then the gnome maybe might fly off, that kind of thing, right? So that's not one that's going to give you an inspiration point, but that's an edge case, right? So, and the scripter was very vocal about this edge case absolutely needs to be supported. So we need to make sure that gust of winds makes things spin faster systemically. Otherwise it's not a system. Sure. And so things like that could lead to an inspiration point where you say, okay, well, that was actually clever of you. So here you're going to get a point. And that point then Cohh is going to allow you to, when you don't like the dice, roll again. And then maybe you can fail, or maybe we'll just let the stream decide on the dice. That should be an option also.
There you go. Yeah, that's the way to do it. That's the great play. Yeah, you gotta be kind to your chat. Then it's gonna be a different type of stream. Appeasing.
I'm
the
personally
chat gods.
looking forward to the shortest playthrough ever, ever recorded. The fastest person to ever die in Baldur's Gate.
I attack the mind flare. You shouldn't.
It's 14 seconds is the record, by the way.
Really?
40 seconds?
Zeke's,
14.
Oh,
14
wow.
Yeah.
He did attack the mind flare.
You can attack that fast.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Well,
Quad goals. Let's go. Let's go, Chad. Let's
There you
go.
go. There you go.
All
Thank you so much for joining us. We got early access coming out on the 30th, 28 days away. Full release sometime after that. I'm sure you guys don't have a time for that. You got to make the game right before you even get out of early access. So,
Exactly.
Gotta cook.
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Any final comments that you want to impart on us, Sven, before we wrap up the show here?
Yeah, maybe just one. So we're doing a lot of effort to explain to people what early access is. So if you want a full polished experience, just wait until it's completely cooked. So if you join early access, try to understand this is a game still in development, right? So, and it's really only for people that want to see the game early on, get a first taste of what it's going to be like, try things out that they would never do. But if you want it fully polished, just wait. Because don't disappoint yourself. Then there's still stuff that we have to do, and we are serious when we talk about that. We're going to be developing this in conjunction with the community. So that means there's still work to be done. So you'll get and to use a metaphor, a very bad one probably because I'm making it up, but you're going to get a house. And you're going to get a roof on top of the house, and there will be some very basic furniture that you're going to find in there, and they might find a couple of cool paintings in there. You're not going to, and you'll even manage to get some atmosphere in there. You'll be able to hold a party in it, but it's not going to be that house in which somebody has lived for 20 years, where every single nook and cranny has every single thing that you would expect it to be and handy and everywhere. That's not going to be there. So there's a difference between the two things. But if you want to be part of the decoration of that house and making it that house from 20 years down the line, then join early access. Even if you don't give us feedback, we are tracking it, and that is invaluable to us. It's very, very, very useful.
Awesome.
That was it. That's
All
my
right.
little piece.
Fantastic.
All
Thank you so much for coming on. We had a great time talking to you. We'll definitely have you back on in the future once the game's out there in early access and see how everything's cooked, so to speak. And probably have
Very
all
much.
played that. Zeke will report on if he's beaten 14 seconds or not.
I just did a call to action in my chat. I'm not kidding. I'm like, who's with me?
We'll check it on Cohh to see how
I'll
many
let you know what it's
reloads.
like when you get 20 on every single roll.
Beautiful. It'll be a good time. And then, of
Right.
course, I'll have 4 druids in my party, and we'll just destroy everything in the game. It'll be super strong. It'll be great. It'll be easy times.
Seriously, but and
Yes,
thank you so
man.
much for your time, man. This has been awesome.
Right.
Really
you,
appreciate
guys.
you. Like it's been so cool seeing you make the rounds and like being so interactive with the community and we really appreciate the honesty in kind of like how you talk about the development process and everything and the state of the game and where it's going. It's very refreshing these days. And yeah, we really appreciate you. Thank you for everything you're doing.
All right. Thank you very much, Cohh. That's very kind of you. All right.
Fantastic.
Take care,
All right.
guys.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more dropped frames right after this. Don't go nowhere. We'll see you in about 5 or 6 minutes. Bye-bye.